everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod BBQ podcast. I am Mike Musto, your host, together with Mr. Ryan Douthit and Mr. Bill Stokes, who is the Motorsports Manager for Subaru of America. Now, that sounds like a pretty badass job, and I'm sure it is, but we're here to talk about Goodwood because these guys just came back from Goodwood, and Ryan filmed, and Bill put this car together, which was didn't put this car together, but was instrumental in the development of Travis Pastrana's hill climb car, a 1983 Subaru GL wagon. So, okay, Bill, you're on. Talk to me. How did the genesis of this monster with active aero and a car that is basically unknown unless you're, well, my age and Ryan's age, and you look younger than we do. So
my dad had one.
Yeah, I mean, walk us through this, Bill. First, how you doing? Are you recovered from jet lag? Give us the whole story.
Well, hey, Mike, thanks for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it. Yes, I am finally over the jet lag. I was, sick coming back, exhausted from 4 or 5 days of just seeing every awesome race car you've ever seen in your life or wanted to see in your life. Goodwood is just amazing. But we had a great time at Goodwood. I got 5th overall up the hill. Not as good as we got last year with 2nd with the Air Slayer, the last car we brought to Goodwood. But
to note on that, you got 5th overall, but the cars that were ahead of you were like the Mcmurtry. Like the cars in front of you were otherworldly.
Ridiculous. Yes.
Yeah, it was a crazy year for the hill climb. I mean, a lot of fast stuff showed up, and every year fast stuff shows up, but it's totally a crapshoot with that event because it's invitation only. So anything could be there and you just never know. So you have to just take the invitation and show up and do the best you can. And hopefully you'll do well, but it's such an awesome event. We love it so much. And we go every time we get the invitation.
Mm-hmm. So how did it come about that? Travis, first of all, I feel like this guy's been a phenom since he came out of the womb. There's literally nothing he can't drive, ride, or do, and it's really frustrating because every time you think you're like, hey, I'm kind of good at this, you look at what Travis does, you're like, I'm terrible at everything. It's really frustrating. Yeah. So talk to us about the car. How did an 83 wagon, how did that pop into your head and be like, yeah, this is definitely the one?
Be the squarest, nerdiest Subaru on the planet.
This is a great idea. I think we're going to go with this one.
And then
everybody knows what it is.
Yes, do that.
Right.
Yeah. I'll walk you through the actual process. So we were kind of in the afterglow from launching Gymkhana 2020. This is in early 2021. And that video did really, really well, came out of the gate, and a lot of people watched it, got tons of views.
Sick video.
Yeah, it was a really big deal for us to come back to Gymkhana after, not having a Subaru in Gymkhana since 2009 or whatever it was with Ken. New driver, all that stuff. And Travis's own take on it, which is like a lot more jumps, a lot more speed, just kind of taking Gymkhana in a different direction and doing it with Subaru. And so we were like, okay, we want to do another one. And we talked to Hoonigan, and they were like, yeah, we'd love to do another one. And so we started to think internally, this is like within SOA corporate, like what should the next car build be? Because we have to give Vermont Sports Car, who is our rally and rallycross, technical partner, we have to give them the directive as to what the car is going to be. And, how much power do we want to make? And like, what wacky stuff do we want to put on it? And so we were like, okay, we just did the craziest STI we could come up with. We basically took a rally/rallycross machine and amped it up to 11 and put a bunch of extra aero stuff on it and gave it 860 horsepower and said, okay, that's the best STI we could make. And then, so for the next one, we were like, we don't want to do another STI. It's just going to be like, just, incrementally, just a little bit more than that. Let's do something totally, totally different. But we still want it to be something that's recognizably a Subaru, like in terms of the shape. Subaru doesn't do convertibles or minivans or pickup trucks usually. Right. So let's come up with a shape and a style and a model that's iconic as a Subaru, but not what people have seen before. So it's not an STI or a WRX or anything like that.
I got a question on that point. Was part of the decision of the delay of the STI in the US market? So there's no STI this coming year. Did that play into that at all? Did somebody say, we'd love to do another STI, but there is no STI in the US, so what else can we do? Was that part of the conversation? Or are those two totally different departments conversations?
So those were two different things. We hadn't really factor that into the decision. We always looked at a need to go in a different direction after we did the Air Slayer, because you just wouldn't be able to have as big of like a spectacular moment just doing another one of what you just did, you know? So we were looking at it as a total clean sheet build that was based on something else, even from the beginning.
Now, Bill, for those who are listening out there, they might not know what the Air Slayer was, right? If they don't follow. So just give us a quick 30-second rundown on what that was.
Okay. So the Air Slayer was the STI from Gymkhana 2020. Mm-hmm. It was our interpretation of like the ultimate STI. So it had 862 horsepower, sequential 6-speed transmission, active rear wing, deployable from a button in the cockpit. It was designed to jump 200 plus feet and do 150 miles an hour. The whole body was carbon. Right. It had like extra long travel suspension, everything we could get from our rally and rallycross program and all the championships we've won over the years, and we just stuck it all into one car. And that was that's what you see on your screen right now with Ryan. It was like the most insane STI that we could possibly come up with based on all the rally and rallycross tech that we had on hand.
Okay. So now when you went over to the new car, the 83 GL wagon, one of the coolest parts about Subaru is because you're such a legacy brand, because you have built so many iconic vehicles, especially, when it comes to rally, right? I mean, I think for many of us, Colin McRae, right? In
22B, man.
Oh yeah.
That's the probably one of the most iconic rally cars of all time. So, but to dive back into your history and pull out something like this wagon, it was such a great thing and such a wicked idea. So who came up with said wagon?
One person had to have been the guy.
Yeah. Who was that guy?
Point fingers.
So there was a meeting with sort of 3 people, and it was myself and my direct boss, who Ryan, is the director of corporate communications, Dominic, and then our boss, who's the vice president of marketing, who is a seriously hardcore car guy. I've raced with him. He's like us. He's got gasoline and nitrous oxide in his veins. And so the 3 of us were kind of sitting around having kind of an offhand conversation about the direction that this should go in. And when we were looking at, okay, what is the shape? Yeah. I honestly don't remember which of the 3 of us said it should be a wagon, but wagons are the other shape that's kind of iconic to Subaru, right? Yeah. Like the Outback and all of those old legacy wagons that so many people, especially me growing up in the Northeast.
As much as anybody would love to see an SVX, as much as anybody would like to see an SVX, Hoonigan Gymkhana car, nobody knows what the SVX is outside of a few people.
There's like 8 of us. And, there's a lot of people that think of Subaru as this like crunchy granola Northeast and Northwest US kind of brand that, makes family wagons. And so we were like, well, that's the most Subaru thing that we could come up with that isn't an STI. Mm-hmm. And that's where the genesis came from. And then we went from there to say, okay, what's the most iconic wagon that we've done, or the one that maybe has the most visual impact? Yeah. And that's where we landed on the ski team wagons from the 1980s.
Yes.
And the livery and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly what was going through my head. And that's, I think what's one of the most amazing things about the brand is that, there are so many people, I think, in other brands, and they're a little younger, and that's all fine and dandy. But to people that have that kind of income, like I'm sure when Travis ran up the hill, people saw that video. I guarantee you websites across the planet lit up, and the biggest search was Subaru wagon, right? Yep. Because, and I have to be honest with you, like I remember as a kid, a friend of mine, his mom had a Subaru wagon, a GL wagon. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time, this is early 80s, first time I had ever seen anybody really wheel a stick. And it was great.
When the Swedish women's team broke down.
There we go.
Yep.
And that's the ad right there. I mean, that picture of that white with that red, white, and blue, really, Subaru wagon with the vinyl graphics and stuff and the US ski team logos, that was the visual that we wanted to hit with the build of the car. We said, okay, Vermont Sports Car, here's your brief, and we'd like you to build us the most insane version of this that you possibly can.
So then is that something where when you're doing a build like that, right? I'm sure you have parameters. We need X amount of horsepower.
Mhm.
We want it to do, it's got to fit X wheels. It's obviously a fully caged car, but then all of a sudden you start talking about active aero. How did that even come into the conversation? Because active aero, you're going to see that on some hypercars and things like that. 83 GL wagon, not so much. So like, was that an idea from Subaru corporate? Was that a Travis thing?
Did Travis need it for his stunts and stuff like that? Did he go like, yeah, I want to do this thing, but I need it to do this?
Yeah. How did that come about?
Actually, that came out of the reality of filming the Air Slayer and filming Gymkhana 2020. Because if you watch that video, you'll see Travis using the rear wing, which has an active flap on it, which deploys when he pulls on the handbrake. You'll see him using that to adjust the attitude of the car in midair. So he'll take off and he'll pull the handbrake, and the aero flap will do this, and that'll increase the rear downforce, and it'll keep the nose from dropping. It'll keep the rear of the car down so that he can adjust how he takes off and how he lands.
Yeah.
And so knowing that he needed to have some control over how the car took off and landed, we said, okay, we need to make sure that there's some aero surfaces on the car that can then be controlled, whether they're actively controlled by Travis in the air, or whether we can set them up in advance and he can just push a button and they will deploy in whatever configuration he needs for a specific jump.
Okay. So then just my own curiosity, when you're building this thing and when you're going through the testing process of this, right? Is it something where you guys built the car, Travis would come in, get in the car, do a couple of runs. Would he say, okay, well, the aero is doing this, or the aero is pitching it sideways a little too much? Like, when that happens, how much testing, physical driving testing and feedback do you get from the driver to make sure the car does exactly what he wants it to? Because the hill climb is so compact, right? You're talking about a run that's a car and a half wide as far as the width of the course. How much of his input is really involved in there?
So actually, there's a couple of different use cases for that active aero, and you touched on two of them there. So there's the testing for the actual video and the jumps, and then there's the testing. There was the hill climb itself, and we used the active aero on the hill climb as a braking aid. And that was that particular usage was kind of sussed out and tested over the course of the Thursday and Friday practice runs at Goodwood. So the engineers were looking at where they could use the active aero to improve the braking, and they adjusted the deployment of those flaps, and particularly the fender flaps on the front and the rear, based on braking G. So they had the ability to set up the flaps to deploy under a certain braking G, and they could adjust that braking G to have it deploy earlier or later, or under heavier braking or lighter braking. So that was something that we tested during the hill climb. The jump testing for the video, we do a couple of days of shakedowns and testing in advance of shooting the actual Gymkhana videos. And so when we started the initial part of the shoot, which we've already started to capture some of the footage, we did a bunch of testing just the day before we were actually going to go out and start shooting scenes. And we futzed with the aero a little bit and figured out exactly what was going to give us the attitude that we wanted. And actually, Ryan's showing some of the interior screens, the dash screen, that 12-inch wide display that's in the car. There are different modes, and actually, if you look at that, there's a screen that if you could just go back to real quick, Ryan.
This one, that one, this one, or this one?
That one right there, the one with the big N in the middle. So you see, there's a couple of there's a layout of the car, schematic of the car on the left there, and you see there's a couple of yellow panels. There's the roof wing, and then there's the two rear aero flaps. So in that mode right there, those flaps are set to deploy, but the front flaps are not set to deploy. So you can set up a parameter in the display, in the control system for the active aero, and you can say, okay, I want those three things to deploy on a button on the wheel, or you can say, I want them to deploy under braking, or you can reset it and say, okay, I want all the aero to deploy or just the rear wing based on one parameter. So we can set up the car in advance to deploy different parts of the aero based on a sensor input or on a button on the wheel.
And Musto, do you not want a car that has a gauge cluster that looks like this?
Well, it's like Knight Rider.
Coolest.
Yeah. I mean, that's straight early mid 1980s gauge cluster.
Yeah. And then that display of the car on the left also doubles as a backup camera. So that's where the backup camera pops up when he puts it in reverse.
I'll tell you, it's such a neat piece to be able to go back. And again, growing up with these vehicles, right, to see that and then see it running up the hill at speed and driven in such anger and such determination is a pretty amazing thing. Did you have, when you were at the festival, were there a lot of people that knew what the car was? Like, did you have people coming up, were they able to identify it, or was there a lot of, the hell is this? Because like because like an STI is so recognizable, right? I mean, it really is its own icon. Every generation of the STI is an icon, which is ridiculous for a brand to even conceive of doing. And you guys have managed to do it forever. But like the wagon, how were people just like, so what is, I was just kind of like, that must have been
and
kind
also
of fun.
the UK, UK audience specific, like where they're like, oh yeah, my dad had one, or I don't even know, was that the GL ever sold in the UK?
Yeah.
So it's exactly like you're describing, Ryan. There were a lot of people that just did not know what it was, because Subaru in the UK is linked to rallying. It's linked to the Impreza and the WRX and STI and all that stuff that was done over there during the 90s and the 2000s. And for us in the US, we have this totally different image of what Subaru as a mainstream brand is, which is these wagons, these utility cars, these family vehicles. So a lot of people were like, it's a Subaru, but what is it? Like, what Subaru is it? We had to
what we see the badge.
And they're like, it's a GL. It's a what GL? Like,
it's
what
the new
model?
2022 GL wagon. You'll be able to buy it at your Subaru dealer tomorrow.
So they didn't, we had this weird naming convention in the US for a long time where it was just a trim designation, like DL or GL or whatever it was. And there wasn't a name. So, today we have like Legacy, but back then it was just DL, GL, and then the body style. So it would be wagon, or it would be hatchback, or it would be 3-door, or whatever you want to call it. So a lot of people were like, okay, it kind of looks like an alternate reality Audi Quattro wagon or something. But it's a Subaru. And so we had a lot of questions about that, just to explain that, hey, this is a car that was sold in the US and it was very popular, and for what it is. So that the UK audience didn't 100% get it, but the US audience that has seen it online, they have understood exactly what it is.
And to be fair, the Gymkhana videos aren't really, I mean, like, this car was invited to the Festival of Speed, and it's not like this was not why the car was built. It was not built for the festival. It was built for this other thing. So
right. So when you were talking about constructing the car, and I'm going to just throw this out there, any talk of like, maybe we should do a Brat?
We did talk about that, especially because Travis loves the Brat. Like, he is all about the Brat. That's his thing. But one of the things we looked at was, okay, is it going to fly properly? Because one of the things Travis is going to want to do in the Gymkhana video, like he did in Gymkhana 2020, he's got to jump it. Like, jumps are what he does. He's been flying vehicles through the air since he was a teenager. So he's going to want some jumps. And we were a little unsure that we could get the aero balance and the weight balance of a pickup truck to do the things that he wanted to do.
In the back of the wagon, isn't there like a radiator and some other pieces too? So you would have to find a place. So packaging wise, you have more flexibility in a wagon anyway, don't you? Just stuff everything back there.
Yeah, and that's one of the unique things about the wagon that a lot of people don't realize until they really get like a full look at how it's packaged. The radiator it's fed from a duct in the roof that directs down into a carbon tunnel that flows through a radiator, which is mounted at like a 45-degree angle, basically in the rear cargo area, and then flows out just above the rear diffuser. So the radiator is, all the way in the back, basically between the rear wheels. And so I don't even know where you would mount that in a pickup truck, but maybe we'll do it at some point. We just didn't.
I would love to see it.
At Goodwood itself, give us a little information, because it's a bucket list item for me. I mean, I was actually at Pikes Peak doing that event, but we were
texting back and forth from like the two greatest events in the world.
Goodwood is something that I've kind of always wanted to do, and I'm sure I will at some point. What is the atmosphere like, as far as, because you have so many vehicles that are just off the wall and just just these bespoke vehicles, and then along with some just classic race cars and things like that. What is the atmosphere like? Like, how is that, as an American going over there? Is it overwhelming? Is there just so much, like, are you mentally exhausted from trying to take everything in?
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, I can't speak to it, unfortunately, as somebody who's just going there to spectate, because I've only gone there in a work context. Like, I'm there with the team. We're trying to, do well in the hill climb, and we're there for a specific job. So it's not as much fun as I can imagine it being if I was just going there to see everything. But you still spend time, walking through various parts of the event and seeing stuff. Like what Ryan's pulling up right now, there were 6 McLaren F1s in
of course
one
there
section.
were.
As there
Sure.
are.
Of course there are.
Yeah, and there were.
Everybody took a photo of this Stratos too.
Yeah, and that Stratos was like right next to all the F1s, and there was also like a perfect Delta Integrale there, and a bunch of beautiful Ferraris, and like it is so much incredible stuff. Like every race car that you've ever wanted to see in person is there. Pretty much, or there's something similar,
Plus a 2,000 horsepower Ford van,
right? And
the Euro van. I mean,
you can't see everything in 4 days. Even if even if you're there every day, you probably can't see everything. And to be honest, my favorite part is something that most people don't actually take the time to see, and that's the Forest Rally stage, which is up the hill.
Yeah, I walked through that stage, and it is so awesome. I actually got a couple photos here. I don't think the other photographer got them. But the neat thing about it is that it's super tight. Most people don't even know it's going.
And I was just going to say, and that's the hill climb. That's part of the course.
Well, it's the same event, but it's going adjacent. This is the back lot of Lord March's estate, where the other one's the front driveway. So this is the way that the butler comes in to work in the mornings.
Right.
I don't actually know.
I didn't even know that was part. That's wild.
But like they take like legendary rally cars, and they're like literally jumping them in the woods. It's the biggest issue with the rally course, and there is an issue with the rally course, is that it's not really a purpose-built rally course. It's a very, very hard surface.
Yeah.
And very tight. So there is like one cone that they can do donuts around and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, it's a very tight technical course. And I got there and I was supposed to co-drive with, well, not co-drive, but I was supposed to be in the passenger seat with Pastrana for one of the passes of the stage. I'm like, yes, that's going to be awesome. Of course, they give me my little permit. I'm ready to go. And we got news. Travis just rolled the rally car. And the course is so hard that it was a roll that, like in a US race, would probably have been fine because dirt is kind of soft. But this is like hard rock almost. Yeah. And it damaged the cage. So the car was then done for the day.
Well, so Bill, as the motorsports manager, Bill, I have to ask you, how do you manage that? And by that, I mean, you have 2 sides of the coin, right?
Bill,
you have the side where a little bit of that. Right? Like all of a sudden Travis is kicking ass and you're just like, almost best time in the world. He's doing these amazing things with that car. And you're like, he's almost going to get it. And then all of a sudden he clips something and half the car disintegrates. but if he didn't, best time ever. So how do you manage like that that would drive me insane. And as the motorsports manager, where is your stress level on competition days? Because I can only imagine what you go through.
Oh man, that's an issue. Like I'm naturally kind of predisposed to being a little bit anxious about competitive events.
Yeah.
Like I'm very competitive. I want to win really, really bad.
Right.
I hate losing. So I mean, the Forest Rally stage is not really about time for us. We were mostly up there to do some, ride-alongs with sort of friends of the team, journalists, and people like that. So we brought the car over to do that, and it's more of of like demos and just giving people a great experience and that type of thing. So we weren't looking to win, but in the context of an actual rally event here in the U.S. in the championship, we've had a couple of rolls at significant moments. Travis had a roll at New England Forest Rally just about a year ago, and he was like 5 miles from the finish. It was on the second to last stage, and he was like 20 seconds in the lead.
Heartbreaking failure.
God, and I guess my mindset on it is that it's rallying. Rallying is going to have some damage. It's going to have some attrition. If these people are pushing, if the drivers and co-drivers are pushing, they're trying to go as fast as they can. They're trying to win. There's always going to be some rolls. There's going to be some crashes. There's going to be some damage. And the best thing you can do is try to stay positive and, keep your drivers and co-drivers from getting in their own heads about it. Give them a pat on the back and say, hey, I know this sucks. And, you feel like you screwed up, but it's okay. We'll repair the car. We'll be back at the next event and it's going to be fine. And
Right.
Fortunately, we have drivers on our team between Pastrana and Brandon Semenuk, who's our other rally driver, who are very experienced action sports athletes and rally drivers. And they've fallen off the bike before, so to speak.
Right.
And they've gotten back up and they've gone out and they've had success again. So they have the mental sort of skills and the toughness to get over failure and turn it into success at the next thing, So
Gotcha.
we're fortunate in that regard. But again, it is a part of rallying, and you have to deal with a certain amount of failure in order to get to the success.
Right.
So I have a question for Bill here, if I could. I want to play a clip, and I want his reaction when he saw this thing actually at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. This clip is not sped up at all. It was just, that thing is so incredibly fast. So for those who don't know, I'm showing a video, or if you can't see, if you're listening to the audio version, it's a clip of the Mcmurtry, which is a all electric, weighs 2,200 pounds, has fans for downforce. It produces, I believe I read, 4,400 pounds of downforce at 0 miles per hour. It just sucks to the road.
Yeah, it's like a suction cup.
Which gives you this mental thing. So you guys show up for the hill climb, and you have a cool car, Travis is feeling on, whatever, and you see this thing, and you're like, it looks goofy as all get out. You're like, that thing, there's no way that thing works. And then you see it in the practice runs, you're like, holy hell, that just broke my brain.
Yeah. I guess from our perspective, that was the moment where I think everybody else in the hill climb field was just like, well, we're not really competing for the win this weekend, are we? And we had heard that car was coming. We heard there was this little company that was coming with this EV with fans, and they were saying that they were going to challenge for the all-time record. And if anybody's going to challenge for the all-time record, which was it was 41.1, the record for the official hill climb Sunday runs, and the record for fastest time up the hill ever, which was not during the actual Sunday shootout, but I guess was in qualifying or practice or something, was 39.9. And that was with Romain Dumas and the Volkswagen IDR a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And so anybody that's going to go under 40 or around 40, none of the rest of us are going to be anywhere near that, because that's next level, crazy, unbelievable, like cheating fast, that does not comply with physics fast.
Well, that was the thing. Just watching that thing do I was watching that and I'm like, I don't think my brain can process that speed. Like the cameraman must have been like, what the fuck? Like, how do you keep up with that?
The best thing is on the practice runs, they cut to in-car. They didn't do it on the final runs, I don't think, but on in-car, and it was a different driver, if I'm not mistaken, because in practice,
they used two different drivers.
Right. Yeah. So they're cutting to the driver, and you're seeing this thing go really quick, and you're like, boy, that driver, he must be really on. And then it cuts to his in-car, and he's like this.
Oh, yeah, it has to be.
And you're like, yeah. Okay, it's intense for him too. Okay, I get that.
Well, I mean, when you think about the crazy part, like when we were kids, you growing up, and I remember watching like Knight Rider, right? Remember, Mike hit the turbo boost button, and the rate at which the speed climbs, it was just digital speedometer, just screaming up. That's a reality now with the cars that we have, and that's the most insane thing in the world. Is that 40 years ago, you're like, oh my god, it's the future. We're there. And the fact that these vehicles are doing that now and having the active aero and the amount of speed, an EV, it's just amazing. Like I look at race cars now and I'm like, I got nothing. Like I got, I can't explain it. I can't really talk about it anymore. The only thing I could do is just sit here slack-jawed and ask as many questions as I can.
Yeah.
Because what you guys do with automobiles, stock and it's just amazing, man. It's just, I take my hat off to you guys. You guys build some of the wildest, craziest stuff I've ever seen. It's just cool.
Yeah. Well, it's really kind of you to say. I think the majority of the credit really does need to go to the engineers, because the engineers that are working in motorsport are brilliant. Oh yeah, brilliant people. And it's amazing what they can do with dampers and with engines. And I'm absolutely staggered at some of the people that we work with. I mean, our crew at Vermont Sports Car, they have, ex-WRC engineers. They have people that have worked on engines that are running in the World Rallycross Championship. We've got some homegrown folks that are from Vermont and are unbelievably advanced, high level, engine and suspension engineers and experts. And it really is remarkable just to watch someone who's very good at what they do do their job. The same way Travis, Travis is amazing at what he does, whether it's rally or motocross or whatever. When I watch someone like Giannis Loyson is the name of one of our engineers. He's one of our top guys. He comes from the engine side, and to watch him work on an engine design is just amazing, because you're watching one of the best people in the world at this doing what they love to do and what they're great at doing. So I'm constantly feeling lucky in my job that I get to work with people like that.
And then you get to take that best engine in the world engineer guy, and he gets to make something that goes to one of the best drivers, stunt drivers in the world guys. Yeah. And it's just like, when you have a team all playing at that level, you just get some amazing stuff. Like hopefully what we'll see in the upcoming Gymkhana video.
Yeah. when all of that talent and all of that effort is put to the service of making insanity.
That's a great way to put it.
Race cars, but just making like tire smoke and big jumps and just crazy stuff for entertainment value. It really is a remarkable situation, because normally that stuff is very serious and it's intense, and you have to you're after every tenth of a second of competitive advantage, and instead we're just turning Yokohamas into smoke at the most ridiculous way we possibly can.
But I mean, that's the best part, right? When you think about it, if you have the capacity as a massive automobile company to take the imagination of full-grown adults and revert them back into 4-year-old children that just laugh and giggle, you've done your job, right? Like that's the most, like, how do you, and I love the fact that, like, you talk about your engineers and you talk about your drivers, right? And, they're developing these things, and the tolerances for the engine and the roll cages and all this stuff. And it's like, everything you're doing right now is going to make grown men giggle,
including ourselves,
right? Like thanks. Thanks for the education. Appreciate it. Right. Thanks for the engineering, but you're using all of this to literally make grown men laugh. I think that is the coolest thing. I think it's the coolest thing in the whole world, man. Every time I think about that, I'm like, it's the best job ever. You guys rule.
Well, again, thanks for saying it, and we do have a lot of fun doing it. So I'm glad people are able to enjoy it, because you have to have some fun doing what you do, right? There's just hey, life is tough sometimes. So to be able to make something fun for people to enjoy is really rewarding.
Yeah.
So Bill, we've got about 5 minutes left. So what's next? What are you working on? Now we know the next Gymkhana is going to be coming out soon. But what do you have on the horizon for either you personally or in the company or whatever the case is?
Well, obviously the rally season's in full swing right now. We have a new rule set coming in for rally next year, which is a huge change. We're getting a significant update to the rules in the American Rally Association for the first time in a long time. So we're going to have to develop new cars to those rules, that's a big development project. And developing new race cars is really fun, because you do get a chance to address all the stuff that you didn't get to address in the last one. And we last designed a rally car back in 2015. So we've got, 7 years of learnings, and how can we change suspension geometry, and what engine upgrades can we make, and how can aero be better? All of that stuff.
Aero.
Flaps on the fenders. So that's a really cool one. And I've been with the program for a little over 4 years now. So this is my first time getting to go through that process with Vermont Sports Car and get to see all those great minds work on that project. We also have the Nitro Rallycross season coming up in a few months. It's underway. The EV class for Nitro Rallycross is already underway, but the Supercars ICE Championship is going to be kicking off soon here in the US. And so we've got that coming up. We've got a title to defend. We won the driver and team championships last year, and that was the first time we won both. Big moment for us as a team. So we're gonna try.
That was many years in the making.
Yes. Yeah.
I was at the first one, and it's been a long time.
Yeah, things went pretty badly for us for a while in rallycross, but we finally have gotten to the top of the sport, and that's been a big reward for us after a lot of years. So we're looking to defend that championship, or those two championships. And then, we'll see what happens next with Gymkhana, because it's still pretty up in the air. But I think what we're going to end up with for Gymkhana 2022, the new one, is going to blow some minds, and we'd love to see where the franchise could potentially go after that.
I'm stoked. I can't wait to see it.
I think everybody's in the same boat. And then Bill, where can everybody find you? Where can they find out information about Subaru in general? Where can they find out information about Gymkhana, about you? This is the time. Throw them all out there. Where can everybody find out everything everybody wants to know?
Yeah, the stuff that you want to get, the updates and information about the team is on our social media channels, which are pretty much at Subaru Motorsports USA or at Subaru MS_USA on Twitter, but mostly on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok is where you'll find us, and that's at Subaru Motorsports USA.
They do a really good job of updating that stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, we got a great social media team too, and they try to get as much content out on social as possible because it's hard to consume rally in the US. There's not like a broadcast or a live stream package, so we try to put as much up on social as we can and keep the content flowing for people to watch it. And you can also obviously watch all the Gymkhana videos, including Gymkhana 2020 on the Hoonigan YouTube channel. And you can find Subaru Launch Control, which is our behind the scenes documentary series that we've been doing for the last
brilliant series.
9 years. You can find that on the Subaru USA YouTube channel. And there's going to be some more news about Launch Control coming out soon too. So that's one exciting thing that I didn't get around to mentioning, but we'll have more Launch Control coming soon.
Cool. Okay, so based on that, and Ryan, Bill, we got to have you back on because I've got a lot of other questions, and I think one of which is I think we got to have you back on in the next couple of weeks if you don't mind, because you had mentioned that you race, so I'd like to talk to people about. Well, I'd like to talk to people about that. Ryan has been covering rally for forever, and I think the combination of you guys, just from an educational perspective, talking to the listeners is really, really cool. So like, okay, we did the hill climb this time. We talked a little bit about the GL and Gymkhana. Next time you're on, it's going to be like, it's going to be your episode. Right? It's going to be the Bill Stokes episode. We're going to talk to what you've done. We're going to talk about your career and stuff like that, because part of it, and it's always great to have representatives from the manufacturers here, but I also really enjoy individual stories. How did you get into the industry? How did you start racing? How did you work your way into motorsports? There's a lot of questions that I have that aren't answered that we're going to answer.
How did you get the greatest job in the world?
Greatest job in the world, right? So, Ryan, when we get off here, Bill, hang on for just a minute. We're going to reschedule to come back on because this is really cool.
That sounds great. It's been a blast talking with you guys, and Mike, it's been awesome to meet you as well. So I'd be happy to be on anytime, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about my awesome job and the brand that I really enjoy working for.
All right, rad. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of this episode of the Hot Rod BBQ. If you are looking for the greatest Subaru cars in the world, obviously you're going to go to Subaru and you're going to check them out. But if you want some used Subarus, go to Hemmings.com. We got 25,000 cars online, plus an auction site. You may find one there. Otherwise, that's it. And Bill, thanks for coming on. Ryan, always great to see you, my friend.
Always fun.
And we will make an announcement when Bill's coming back on, which will be soon. And that's it. We'll see you next time. That's it. Goodbye. Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod BBQ podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod BBQ podcast and hit that subscribe button, and we'll come to you every week.